Hi everyone and welcome back to this week's Sunday Sewing Club. We're here today with episode 4 and I cannot quite believe that we're 4 weeks into this series. We've been doing a new project every week. You all seem to be loving it. I'm getting so many lovely messages and some great feedback, so thank you so much for that. Every week I am just completely freestyling these projects. There's no practice run going into it. When I'm filming it, this is you live doing the project with me. So thank you so much for following along, and I've really enjoyed doing this series. So the idea of this series was to do it every single week, which we have done for the past month, and it was just a trial to see how you all liked it and how you all responded and if you wanted me to continue. I've had so many lovely messages asking me to carry on with this series. So moving forward, we are going to be doing the Sunday Sewing Club, but it's not going to be weekly anymore. It's just going to be the first Sunday of every month, and then that gives you all a chance to do the project, and you don't just have to do it in one day. You can take the entire month if you need to do it, just bits and bobs, and continue it, and that way you're not rushing through any projects and we can just do it together in slower time. So today we're going to be making this tiered skirt, which can also be used as a dress. I'm just going to stand up here to show you. Okay, so there's going to be 2 variations that you can do this skirt. I have done it slightly tighter around my hips, just because I have done different variations of this skirt before, in 3 tiers, in 4 tiers, and I already have quite a lot of more loose fitting, wider skirts. So when I made this one, I wanted to make it slightly more fitting to the hip, but still flowy towards the bottom. So that's what I've done with mine. But when we start the video, I will put the options in for the 2 variations, so you can follow the more slimmer version, which is the one that I've got on today, or you can follow the more wider version, which I will insert a picture here of a slightly more wide one that I've done in 3 tiers rather than in 4 tiers like today's skirt. But whichever one that you decide to follow, the tutorial is the exact same, it's just the measurements in the beginning. So when you're taking your measurements, you'll just times it by a slightly higher number. I will link in the description below a diagram for both variations and a step-by-step for cutting and measuring your material. I'm going to go ahead now and cut out all of my panels, and then we'll come back to it afterwards. So we're going to start with tier 4, which is the longest panels that we have for the bottom of the skirt, and we'll have 2 of them, one for the front and one for the back. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by finishing the top and bottom edge. So leave the sides raw, and the top edge and the bottom edge we're going to finish either using an overlocker if you have one, or if you don't have one, you can use your standard machine with a zigzag stitch. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish both of these now. So now we've finished both the top and bottom edges of the panels, what we're going to do now is we're going to add our stitches to start gathering. So to the top line here, where we're going to attach it to the tier 3 panel, what we're going to do is we're going to sew 2 straight lines about 1 centimetre apart, and we're going to sew them leaving the tails exposed. We're not going to backstitch at the beginning and end. We're just going to start sewing the lines from one end to the other, no backstitching, leave 2 long tails either side, and then we're going to start gathering the panel. So for your machine, you want to set your tension to 2, and then you want to change your stitch length to 4, and then you want to stay on straight stitch. Okay, so we're going to start, and remember not to backstitch, we're just going to set off. pull that out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the 2 top threads, and then we're going to start gently pulling on them to start gathering the material. And what you want to gather it to is the length of the next tier above. So we're going to grab our tier 3 panels. Just grab one of them. Lay it out in front of us. And then continuing the process of pulling the 2 top threads. We're going to lay this panel out in front, and the idea is we want to gather it until it's the same width as the panel above. Okay, so once you've gathered the tier 4 panel to the same width as the tier 3 panel, what we're going to do now is we're just going to go and finish the top and bottom edge of the tier 3 panel with either an overlocker or a standard machine if you don't have an overlocker. And then once we've finished the top and the bottom, we're then going to attach tier 4 to tier 3, and we're going to continue that pattern all the way up to the top. So I'll just go and finish the top and bottom of this now. Okay, so once you've finished that edge, what we're going to do is we're now going to get the tier 4 panel, and we're going to place the tier 3 panel on top. And we're just going to pop some pins in right along that edge. Okay, so now we've pinned it all in place, what we're going to do is on our machine, we're going to change the stitch length back to 2.5. We're going to put the tension back up to 4. And then we're just going to sew with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance all the way along, attaching the 2 panels together. This time we're going to back stitch at the beginning and end to secure the stitch. Okay, so once you've stitched on the tier 4 panel to the tier 3 panel, you should have something like this. So where you've stitched on your gathers, you've done it all prior to 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. So when you do your 1.5 centimetre seam allowance to attach the panels, the 2 gathered rows will be hidden. So it's up to you at this point. You can either remove them if you like, remove the basting stitches if you'd like to, but the seam line should cover them 2 stitches, so they're fine to leave in if you're happy to do so. But as I say, you can remove them. It's just totally up to your preference. So now we have tier 3 and tier 4 attached to each other, and we're going to repeat the exact same process now, all the way up the skirt. So we're going to get our tier 2 panel, and again we're going to finish both the top edge and the bottom edge with either the overlocker or zigzag stitch on the standard machine. And then once we've finished them, both edges, we're then going to apply 2 rows of gather stitches to the tier 3 panel, the top of the tier 3 panel, and then we're going to gather this panel in to be the same width as the gather 2 the same width as the tier 2 panel, and then we're just going to keep repeating the same process to the tier 1 panel, and then we'll repeat the entire process again for the other panels for the front side, as this is the back. And then once we've done that for both the front and the back, we've attached all tiers, we're then going to attach at the side seam. So I'm going to go ahead now and continue with the tier 2 and the tier 1 panel, and then I'll come back to you once that's done. Okay, so now we've attached all 4 tiers. You should have something that looks like this. So now I'm just going to go ahead and do the other side. So this is the back. I'm now going to go and follow the exact same process for the front, which is to finish both the top and bottom sides of every tier using the overlocker or the zigzag stitch on the standard machine. And then once you've done that, we're just starting with the bottom panel, tier 4. We're putting 2 lines of basting stitching, we're gathering it to the length to the panel above, attaching it with a 1.5cm seam allowance, turning it over, and then we're just repeating that process all the way from tier 4 up to tier 1. So I'll go ahead and do the other side, and then I'll come back once we're done. So now that we have both the front and the back panel, we're going to press the seams open on each tier, just like this. And now we've pressed the seams open for each panel, we're just going to lay both the front and back panel down, and we're going to lay them right sides together like this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pin along both sides, but we're just going to ensure that the panel seams are lining up. So if you align each panel seam, keeping the seam pressed open on both sides, and just pop a pin in. And we're going to do that along every panel, just aligning each one. And then we'll just pop a few more in, just aligning the top and bottom edge. And then we'll repeat the same on the other side. And then we're going to do a straight stitch with a 1.5cm seam allowance along both sides of the skirt. And now I'm just going to finish the edges on both sides. You can either use an overlocker or a standard machine zigzag stitch if you don't have one. And then once you've finished the sides of the skirt, we're now going to get our waistband. And we are going to sew the short side together with a 1.5cm seam allowance. We're now going to get our skirt right side facing us, and then we're going to fold our waistband wrong sides together in half lengthways. And we're going to press it to hold it in place. Because I'm using a double gauze muslin, I'm not actually placing the iron on top of the material, I'm just using the steam. But with any other standard cotton or linen, you can press the iron on, but I just don't want to remove the crinkle from the material. Once you've pressed the waistband with the right side facing out, we're now going to attach it to the skirt, and I'm going to start by putting the seam where we've joined the waistband in the centre of the back of the skirt, and we're just going to pin it in place. Okay, so now we're just going to sew this waistband onto the skirt. What we're going to do is we're going to leave a 2cm gap where we've joined the seam here, as this is where we're going to put the elastic through, and then we'll seal it up again. Now what we're going to do is get some elastic. Mine's 2cm wide, and you're going to cut it at the same measurement as your waist. And then we're just going to grab a safety pin, and then using a safety pin we're just going to pop it onto the elastic, and then the gap that you've left earlier that we didn't sew for the waistband, you're now going to insert the safety pin through that gap and just pull through your elastic. And then once you've pulled it through the other side, I like to just put both ends together, pop the safety pin through so that we don't lose the elastic. And then I'm just going to pull it through and just check that the elastic isn't twisted anywhere. Okay, so once you know that it's not twisted, you can then remove the safety pin. Oh, out. Remove the safety pin. And then we're going to lay them on top of each other, crossing them over by about 2cm either side, and then we're going to secure it with a zigzag stitch. You can just pop a pin in just to keep it in place while you're putting it under the foot. And then with a zigzag stitch, just forward stitch and back stitch. I just do that a few times to ensure it's secured properly. And then you can remove the threads. Now at this point, then you're just going to pull it through. And then we're just going to close that gap that we left open earlier to secure it in. Just be careful not to grab the elastic when you're doing that. Just make sure it's out the way, and you're going to change your machine back to a straight stitch for this part. Okay, so now the waistband is attached, you can either leave your waistband like this, or you can add another step, which I'm going to do, where we add a zigzag stitch around the waistband. If you're not going to add the zigzag stitch to the waistband, you can just move on to hemming it. I'm going to change the width to 4 and the tension to 4. And then I'm going to change it back to a zigzag stitch. I'm just going to start. Okay, so this is what it looks like once I've added the zigzag stitch. So now what we're going to do is we're going to hem the bottom of the skirt. So we're going to turn it in by 1 centimetre and press it. And then we're going to turn it in by another 1 centimetre and press it. And then we're going to stitch all the way round, following the edge of the seam that we've folded and pressed to hem the skirt. This material, because it is double gauze muslin, I'm not going to press mine, I'm just going to fold it and pin. Just because I don't want to iron the crinkle out of it. But if you are using a cotton or any other woven material, then do fold and press prior to hemming it, as it'll just give it a much cleaner finish. And then if you are using material the same as me, just fold it by hand and pop pins in rather than pressing, because you don't want to lose that crinkle. And then we have our finished skirt that can also be used as a dress, a beach cover-up. It's just so versatile and perfect for a warm sunny day. Thank you for watching today's tutorial. I hope that you really enjoyed it, and I'd really appreciate if you could like and subscribe and leave any feedback or comments below, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.